Thanks for joining us on this video, guys. It's on our classic extra strength recovery. Will my face go red? Yes, my face will go red sometimes. If my face goes red, you know I've made a mistake, and I'll probably be apologizing for it in a second. But let's see. Recovery, the original formula. I was skating around hockey rinks, not a care in the world, playing hockey every day basically of my life and every weekend 30 years ago when that product was being formulated with the Royal Dutch Ballet to help them with their serious issues. Many of you have heard that story before, and after, geez, I guess, 12, 20, 26 years now, it's been an actual product in the equine pet, and shortly after that on the human side of things. So it's a big topic. We're going to try to cover it off pretty quickly here. You can look at the list of ingredients. It's a comprehensive formula that does many things in the body. And I think that's what we're going to try to succinctly get across here is how broad recovery is in the body and why you've seen, or if you're new in the industry, you may have heard a little bit about how effective that product can be for so many conditions, with the primary condition, of course, being people with joint pain. And there's many reasons why you can have joint pain, of course. So when you have a product that helps with joint pain as a primary symptom relief aspect of it, then you start to get if you step back and look at it like that, there's so many things that can cause joint pain. It shows you how broad reaching recovery is. And then there'll be so many other things that people, results beyond expectations is a way to sum it up. One of the slogans of the past, powder or capsule. The powder has a little bit of flavoring in it. The capsules, actually, I often just dump the capsules right into drinks too, because it doesn't taste bad at all. It's got our 36-to-1 berry extract of 4 different berries in there, which is delicious. It's not that bad, the flavor of the capsules on its own, but a little added sweetness, a little monk fruit in there, go to the powder, and you get a little bit more cost efficacy out of the powder as well. So I think my face is starting to go red because I've got the recovery formulator beside me and I'm still talking. So let's pass it over to you. Oh, a little bit. Can you see? These cameras are good. They probably can see my face going red. That's why it's good to have a tan like that, I'm working on it. This is pretty good for me.
Right. So recovery. So for the last few years, the whole team has really been pushing me to talk about medicinal mushrooms. I mean, I was enamored by medicinal mushrooms back in the 80s with my microbiology teacher, he was in the burgeoning new science of mycology, because it used to be grouped together with non-vascular plants. And then they found, no, mushrooms are so different. They have, they produce neurotransmitters. They store their sugar as glycogen, not starch. They don't have a cellulose cell. Well, all this kind of stuff, right? So I talk about that, but then I went off the recovery. And I feel like I literally could back in the day when I was primarily focused on working with doctors and vets. So I could have done like crazy multi-day talks on all of the biochemical mechanisms of recovery. I used to go really intense that way, and I loved it. But then a rheumatologist and a vet, there was 2 different presentations, said that the one was a funny one. The vet stood up, and he said there were 50 vets that did a presentation somewhere in BC or Alberta. And he said, what if you put some of this in more of terms that we could relay to our clients, because they already saw the results. That's why they were there and talking. And then another vet stood up and said, so what you're really saying is that you can't understand the biochemistry. And the guy says, yeah, basically. And so then I thought, but that was a wake-up call for me. Because it happened when I was talking about to rheumatologists too, is that they are treating all these patients and everything. There's so much information coming at them, and so many things are changing in the science. There's no established science, right? Science is about an open discourse and change. So, whoa, confusing. So they were trying to get me to come down to human terms, which, for me was a great thing, because I could not sleep or anything trying to formulate all these ways of talking about recovery and how it worked on every single system, and the mucosa and the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, everything, to come back down to how do I talk about this? What was it formulated for? And when Adam said, this was never supposed to be a product. I'm not from a business background or a business family at all. They both worked in government. And I thought, okay, what are we trying to do here? Well, I was literally trying to see, it took 6 years to develop recovery. It's not just thrown together and things. This was a long time ago. So 30 years ago, these things weren't mixed together normally. And I thought, what I was trying to do is, can you turn someone's physiological mechanisms around so they behave more like a kid, a healthy kid, not with allergies, just a healthy functioning young system. I wasn't talking the fountain youth. That's not what I was looking for. I say, can you make someone heal like a kid? Can you make it so that a tissue looks like the healing of a kid? That kind of thing. And that can you save a person's career? Because I was in hockey and track and field, and I saw some of my friends that could have gone NHL that definitely blew out their knees, things like that. So I was aware of that happening. Could you do it? And so that was the whole premise. And then when I got a chance to work behind the scenes in the ballets in Europe, is the thing that kept coming up with dancers that were coming to talk to me was when they felt comfortable enough to me, they had all these conditions, what you would classify as autoimmune conditions, more accurately termed connective tissue disorders, because almost nobody is in an autoimmune condition where your immune system recognizes you as foreign and attacks you. It's kind of like collateral damage. You're absorbing too many things in your system, and your immune system gets overwhelmed, attacks, then your weaknesses show up, right? There's a very little amount of people that have antigenic sequences on there that are targeted by your immune system because of a crossover. So that was the whole idea, was they were presenting with connective tissue diseases like eczema, psoriasis, polyarthritis, polymyalgia, even mild MS, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, discoid and systemic, all these different things. I said, what is going on? It's way beyond the proportions of society, right?
Even common like acid reflux and different digestive issues,
exactly.
even the very common things that people would just have, and
exactly.
they may not be so aware of the other more complex things, but even those simple things, right?
Just simple things. And even spastic, like irritable bowel syndrome, which is so common now. All these different things. Why is that happening so out of proportion with society? And then I was privy to some things that happened. I found out that, they have eating disorders, and eating disorders were prevalent in the ballet world, bulimia and anorexia. So I had to really fine tune my knowledge of eating disorders. I already was knowledgeable in the pathophysiological basis of connective tissue disease and disorders and breakdown associated with aging, right? So the way you break down. And that connective tissue is the most abundant tissue in your whole body. It trumps all the other ones together. So there's the nervous tissue, muscular tissue, and epithelial or lining tissue, and then connective tissue is everything else. Your immune system, everything else is connective tissue. So connective tissue is the primary one you're looking at that's falling apart with aging, because it literally is connecting everything else. So can you influence that? And with these eating disorders and development of all these painful conditions, I was looking at the idea that it was a breakdown of all the mucosa throughout your entire body, and in particular the intestinal tract, which they now call leaky gut, right? This was a long time ago. This wasn't really out there yet. Can you influence the healing of the mucosa that is a result when it breaks down? The things that break it down commonly would be things like excess alcohol, excess use of NSAIDs, like the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin, ibuprofen, naproxen, and things like that. Can you stop that? And is there anything else that's active there to break it down? And lack of sleep is a huge factor, because it's breaking down all the time, and if you don't sleep. So sleep disorder is problematic. What is at the base of most sleep disorders is stress or overthinking, or all these things that are about agitation. You're not in your center. And so, stress is breaking it down. But I was still coming at this from a physical level. I wasn't yet really working with the mindset when I went further into comparative religion, that kind of thing, is, from a physical level, can you initiate protective mechanisms in the body that are anabolic and protective, and also anti-catabolic mechanisms that stops the breakdown? And so recovery came out of that, actually, not about trying to stop pain. It was to try to reinitiate and recover ideal mucosal development and protection. And inside the cell, which is where the Nutricol came from, the grape and the tea, is to stabilize and fluidize the membranes of cells. So throughout, externally and internally. And what my analogy back then is that if you have a catcher, baseball catcher, and you're throwing balls at, and he's young and really flexible, catches everything, dives and everything like that. But over time, you might have a shoulder injury, a knee injury, elbow injury, and I missed that one. That's kind of like your cells when they become more stiff and rigid over time, and we can recognize that externally, but it's happening internally, is they can't do the dance anymore, so they can't receive hormones the same anymore. It's a simplified way of looking at it, but it makes sense. It's just basically, I don't have the same receptivity to insulin, to thyroid hormone, to sex steroids, to growth and insulin-like growth factors. So I don't heal the same. I can't heal the same, and I always am playing catch up or compromising, especially if I'm nutrient deprived, right? That's a huge factor. And as we age, that can happen because your gut's deranged. So you don't absorb properly. So the gut is the start of it, not only because if it's broken down, but also to absorb all the other nutrients in your diet. So that's why I always recommend a good multi or something like that. So recovery was developed for that, actually. But then when you treat that level of reinstating the mucosa, improving its establishment like a moat, but also decreasing its breakdown, that can help everything else in the whole system. That's why recovery has so many benefits that don't seem related, just because you're stopping the infiltration of all the things you shouldn't be absorbing into your body because you've reinstated the mucosa. And as the cells keep breaking down and reforming, they're basically, when you have polyphenols like grape and tea compounds that we have in Nutricol, they're starting to embed in those systems. They make them more fluid, more youthful. Then they receive hormones properly, and then everything starts working better. So in other words...
Yeah, I want to insert again there the anabolism and catabolism,
Yes.
because that's what we're talking about here is super, super important. And when people maybe think about that, customers come in, I've heard of anabolic steroids. Okay, sure, yeah, there's a good example of something that forces growth to happen. But speaking to the customer like that with this, talking about this anabolism and this catabolism and how they want to be shifting towards the anabolism, which is the building, and away from the catabolism. That's a nice place to start, I think, because that is the basis of it all, right? And as you're layering all these other things on top that you're talking about, that works. All of those things work better in the presence of an anabolic state, right? 100%. Where the body says, okay, all this stuff's in here now, and I'm actually in the anabolic. I'm ready to build. I need these things. I need the inflammation down. I need the magnesium. I need a bit of vitamin C for this collagen production. That's all there, ready to be absorbed. But on top of that is keeping that catabolism under control.
And that's perfect that you said that, because that is the simplicity of it. Is when you're young, you have high anabolism, relatively low catabolism. And as you age, once you hit full height, you're starting to now, catabolism is relatively rising, anabolism is falling because you don't produce growth hormone at the same rate. Growth hormone in the brain is then stimulating the liver to produce insulin-like growth factors, somatomedins, that are then involved in repair and anabolism or growth processes. So as we age, all of that is falling apart. And if we're hard on our liver, which a lot of us can be, is that's also depleting the liver's function, not just in detox, but actually repair and maintenance of your whole body. A lot of people actually don't know that step, that the liver is the one directly involved in producing these insulin-like growth factors, the somatomedins, that then are involved in healing in response to growth hormone. So anyways, keeping your liver healthy is huge. That is anabolism relatively higher, catabolism relatively lower, trying to get that youthful side instead of more catabolism. And aging and dying is a process of increased catabolism and decreased anabolism. So when you said that, that is what I was focused on in recovery. And anybody in athletics, like Adam and I both were at back then, you are focused on those drivers. And anabolic steroids is a good example for someone to remember anabolism, growth and repair. So recovery, when you have that, then you have to look at it. My whole thing is then you keep trying it. So it was a 6-year process of trying different formula and then seeing finally the results. So the results, animals don't have a placebo effect. We have a very large veterinary division, and it's been used in animals the size of, like I said, Siamese fighting fish, all the way up to elephants. And the one story I like to tell, it was a big group of vets, and it was the second time I had spoken to this group, or most of them were the same people. And I said, so the guy stood up, the one vet stood up. He said, I just want to tell a story. He said, I have been a beta fish breeder for, I can't remember, it was like 15, 20 or more years. I don't remember, it was a long time. And he said, I have never had, since I started feeding them recovery, then the whole room went quiet. I remember it. And I was, what did I say? He said, since I started giving it to the fish recovery, the scalation is unlike I've ever seen before. The survivability of the fish, unlike I've ever seen before. And I would never take them off this recovery. And then the whole room was silent. Then one vet finally said, he said, you fed beta fish? Siamese fighting? You fed Siamese fighting fish recovery? And he said it wasn't species specific. So I thought, anyways, it was amazing. And then Barnum and Bailey Circus had their elephants on that retired because they're very arthritic and they don't move around a lot. So you can think any animal that's been in captivity or rescue has been on recovery. So we donate a ton of product, even to parrot rescues to get their feathers to grow back and all that thing when they're all stressed out, because it helps to calm them down and regrow. But when you see the results, there's no placebo in animals. And then we have the other product, Recovery 3.0, which we're going to talk about as well, which is it's fast acting and it also helps with stress and different things. But the Recovery, the original, is meant to go beyond all the pain and inflammation to changing the way your skin, nails, hair, everything, but the way you feel and function. It just gets better and better and better. So on the mind, body, energy of our Triskel, our logo, mind, body, and energy, like the ancient medicines. Recovery, yes, it's heavily focused on the body side, and its development was that. But Justin, who is our good friend and is in Purica, he said it's almost as if you're trying to formulate a mushroom. And it is really cool this way, because this is something I can talk to with this in a training. But this was also developed because my dad, his brother, had passed away at 42 in super good shape of a massive heart attack. His aorta had ruptured. It was like an old rubber band. And he was 42 and he was in super good shape. You saw him. But he was also went through a lot of stress and everything and held everything inside. So that's where I really got cognizant. Ooh, what is stress? Because I knew I had it with tardive migraines, lack of sleep, everything like that. Put tons of pressure on myself. It was all self-induced. Anyways, then my dad got tested and he had 6 major blocks around his heart, over 95% to 98%. And they rushed him in for, he had 6 bypasses, had a heart attack on the table, had to get stents put in, had to get a defibrillator pacemaker put in. He survived it, but there was a lot of heart death. And they said, if he does everything right, he'll be on 8 different drugs, calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, HMG coenzyme A reductase inhibitors, which are the statins or cholesterol-lowering drugs, ACE inhibitors, potassium sparing diuretics, baby aspirin, nitro, and there was one other that I can't recall right now. Anyways, he was on all those drugs. And they said if he takes all those drugs and does everything properly, diet and exercise and like that, he'll live a maximum of 7 years. That's what he had, maximum 7 years. And so I wasn't going to hear that. And so recovery wasn't just about working with those dancers and then later with horses. It was about trying to get a product that my dad could take with all his drugs, because the cardiologist won't let you go off the different drugs. And if you try to do that, they'll leave you. And there's not a lot of cardiologists. I found this out over the years. Anyway, so recovery was developed to safely integrate with all those drugs. And my dad did that. He incorporated 3 teaspoons with all those drugs. And what happened was, you can't promote that out in the open, but I'm just saying what my dad did. I'm just going to tell you what happened. So he was supposed to live a maximum of 7 years. He lived for 31 years. They had to replace the defibrillator pacemaker 2 times because the battery goes. That was, they considered, they'd never done that before, the Texas company. So he's considered a miracle of modern medicine. Like I said, lived for 31 years, didn't die of a heart attack, died of a stroke from another drug that he was given. Anyways, it goes to show you the power of this product is way beyond what a lot of people would think. And for me, not talking about it all this time is why it still maintains a really top seller, but it should be massive. Like for me, I could talk day and day and day about recovery. I feel like in this industry that we have, we're trying to bridge into the mainstream. You have to give them results they're used to really fast and super powerful. But if you give them something that keeps on going and going and better and better and better, and they see all these different things they never even thought with their heartburn, esophageal reflux, skin changes, all this kind of thing, it starts to blow their mind, and it gives you a ton of credibility. To me, that's what recovery is. It's a product that gives you a ton of credibility, and it works on the physical level with all those 3, body, energy, mind, because whenever you work with the body, you can help the mind and the energy. Obviously, if you're focused on all your pain or itching or this condition you have or whatever, agitation, and you help that, obviously it's going to calm the mind and improve the flow of energy. And then we use the Complete 360 for your mind, for harmony of mind, and then the Shilajit or cordyceps for more focus on the energy, right? Or flow of energy, and mixed with recovery for the body. Body imbalance. So those 3 are really powerful. Recovery, you could go on and on. I could talk about every single system, what it does to the systems, for the epithelial tissue, for the muscular tissue, nervous tissue, and the overall connective tissue, why it was developed. It was never supposed to be a product. So there was no intention of ever selling this or putting it onto market or anything. It was just me working behind the scenes, first with the ballet dancers and trying to make them function like kids so they could compete against these 16, 17-year-old dancers trying to replace them when they had ACL or MCL tear. So that's the idea, was more of an informal way, then it turned into a product when my brother got rid of his eczema that he'd had his whole life. He was in hospitals for it and everything. I got rid of my gut problem and a back injury. I went over a cliff 2 stories down when I was a kid. And then when I was playing hockey, I didn't realize that the goalie had been taken out behind me and I was defense. And I flipped over the goalie, but the net was also taken out and the spike was still in net. And I got impaled on the spike in the same area that I already had connective tissue, scar tissue from when I was 10, going over a cliff on a toboggan run. So I also have gone through these gut problems and pain problems that make you feel like you're way older, and migraines and lack of sleep and all that stuff. It's like, sometimes you don't even want to live, even when you're that young. So to me, it was personal, but it was also personal with my dad. And I wanted to make sure you could integrate it safely with all these different meds that are so difficult to integrate with. And my dad was a true test. You just can't promote that in the open, but I'm saying this is what my dad did. And people are blown away. The doctors are blown away. They would ask me to come into their office to talk about what should I do with this. Whatever you're doing, you should keep doing, because obviously they've never seen anything like that. And it was very, very safe. And he was able to decrease different doses with his doctor by integrating that. He also integrated the complete 360 in there again, high doses, 6 caps of that, 3 teaspoons of recovery the entire time. So these are things that I feel like people should know at least. Yeah, we can't promote them, but we should know, because it was my own dad. And we got all those 24 extra years at least to be with my dad.
And quality years.
Yes, very much quality. Everything mentally, he was still doing woodwork and everything right to the end. You know that, my dad, Ed. And anyways, that recovery is something that just in its non-placebo effects on animals alone, and the fact that it was put to studies against 17 products in the world by vets in the States. We're the only Canadian product, including injections. And it beat every single product. We're the only Canadian, it beat all the different products from around the world. Even when every single product failed to get any results, recovery still had 80 to 100% results in horses with chronic tendinosis and degenerative joint disease in the back and neck.
What was that? What was the exact award that it won with American Horse Journal? What was that award? Was it best arthritis?
Best performer overall with chronic degenerative joint conditions, but also it was tendinosis, so tendinitis, so tendons bursae and things like that.
And tendinitis stuff is terrible.
Yep.
It takes so long to heal with, the blood flow being less to there. So this is another thing that, recovery is doing, is hydrating around that connective tissue, getting that like nutrient exchange through the fluid exchange is such a key part of it. I always make sure I emphasize that when I do the trainings, is this is increasing fluid flow, which is how the body transfers nutrients. And again, tendons, the blood flow is very, that's why MCL tears and these things can be ending. You can break a bone, it can actually heal stronger back, right? Whereas, you mess up tendons real bad and it can be really career ending for a lot of athletes. Yeah. Especially the knee stuff, just how complex it is there.
That bow staff, when I hit myself in the knee, took 8 months to heal, because I hit it so hard. I didn't even realize, it didn't feel like that.
I remember that. That was 8 months.
8 months. So what, Adam, most people in Purica came to work with Purica mostly because of recovery. Other products too, but recovery is the one that's central to most of us, including myself. It's mind-blowing. If you use it properly, it's something that can change your dynamic with your customer, because even if it works on so many different things that people maybe come to for one thing and then they realize, I didn't even know I had heartburn. I didn't even know my guts because I thought it was normal. Or my skin, I thought that was just my skin. Or my nails don't grow and all of a sudden they're growing. That kind of idea, that's enough for them to keep going. And it's about dosing, just starting slow, especially with the powder, because it has a kill-off effect of yeast as well, which can be problematic for some people if it's too fast. They feel like they're having the flu or sick or allergic or something. It's just a die-off. And then aches and pains in different parts of your body if you go too fast, because it enhances clearing mechanisms. I think it kills off parasites, anything better than I've known. And so another thing we put in recovery is magnesium, way before magnesium was big. This is 30 years ago, because magnesium is involved in adrenal. So anything to do with the adrenals and stress and your ability to cope and function with stress is magnesium dependent. And phosphorylase, that enzyme that activates a lot of vitamins, hence the pyridoxal 5-phosphate form, that phosphorylase enzyme is problematic in different types of connective tissue diseases like Crohn's and any inflammatory bowel disease. It's not as active, so they can't activate certain forms of vitamins. So they say, it's expensive urine or whatever they say, doctors. Well, that's true if you can't phosphorylate. Well, phosphorylase in the body is dependent on magnesium. So if you are deficient in magnesium, you can't phosphorylate and activate a vitamin. So it was put in there to make sure that all the other foods and things you're taking and other supplements could be activated. This is before they were talking about magnesium. I knew that was huge. The other one I knew was big is zinc. In the brain, it's zinc and magnesium dependent both. And so if you have a deficiency in zinc, say you go on a diet that you've just switched to a hyper vegan diet or whatever like that, and you're not eating properly, you're just eating comfort foods and you're lacking zinc. That can happen to a lot of people. Then you start getting cloudy mind, can't remember, don't feel proper. That's a deficiency of zinc in phosphorylation. Zinc and magnesium, huge in helping you to phosphorylate vitamins. So anyways, the recovery, there was a ton of thought that went into that in biochemistry and physical mechanisms, but then it was all proofs in the pudding. It's all about, does it actually work as good or better than drugs? And does it get even better over time? And can you integrate it with drugs safely? What happens? All of that was part of the process. Okay? It wasn't just a bunch of ingredients thrown together. It took a lot of effort and time and changing things. And so to me, that's the ancient way, is trial and error and science, and try and start with as safe as you possibly can to exert a really strong, profound effect, and then go from there. So that's the science of recovery was that way. And then it became so big that there was even drug companies got pretty upset about the fact that they thought it was a drug. And then that's a whole nother story. But this is something that raised the awareness of different drug companies against their drugs, the corticosteroids, NSAID class biologics, disease-modifying antiemetic. So I always felt pretty good about that. But again, it was never supposed to be a product. So the fact that it's out there right now is a testament to how powerful it is, and that we had to put it to market. And that's how we formed Purica, was because of what it did to my brother inevitably, and his horses got rid of his eczema, and it never came back, and he didn't even do everything properly. It never came back. So this is something that we feel is a super powerful tool. And over time, compared to the 3.0, which we'll talk about, it's more focused on getting better and better and better, more and more youthful overall, and you'll feel that way. Anything else you say?
No, I don't think so. Just the dosing. People need to play with that. You mentioned it, right? Start slow, work up to full dose. That's what we really, really recommend. People try to go through the, better part of a full size 360 cap or 350 gram bottle at that full dose once they work up, which is, 2 teaspoons a day or 5 caps twice a day. So 10 caps a day or 2 teaspoons a day spread between 2 doses. Away from dairy or soy is ideal if you can do that. But that's not what we want everybody on for life. We just want to have the lowest effective dose eventually, right? To get people over, to be able to just have that quality of life back. So, I've met lots of people, couple quick things here, that just take 2 caps a day. Like I've met, little old ladies, that take 1 or 2 caps a day, and they're like, is that good? And I'm like, that's great. Does it work for you? It's like, yeah, that's good. I've met people that take it when, for example, one lady at a Thrifty Foods, she works at the till. And so she would take it when her hip flares up. So she would just take it acutely, and that worked for her. It's just you just take it till that disappears, and then it was just not a chronic thing. It would just kind of go on and off, and then she'd buy some more and take it when it was flared up. And so she's actually helping improve that reparative process as well while she's taking it. But for her, it was symptoms that triggered her. So there's many uses of it. Athletes can take more, especially, or if you're going to go out and do something extreme, like Megan from head office did an awesome hike in Croatia for like 3 weeks. So I'm sure she was taking the recovery, getting her body ready for that. Because if you're going to put a little bit more stress on the body, then it can help combat all those things that Jason's been talking about here. And those are the last thing I'll say is it's happening. Chronic arthritis or chronic conditions don't happen overnight. 99.9% of the time, if you get exposed to some radiation or something, maybe it will, flare up overnight. But in general, they've taken a long time to occur in the body and for the symptoms to come up. And so where I'm getting at is those processes of breakdown are going on now, no matter what the age is. As soon as you basically become an adult and you're done physically growing, those processes are going on. So one way to think about recovery is that it's delaying those processes. And again, it's improving those reparative anabolic processes that are going on. So it's a great insurance policy, especially for people coming in that are new and just want something because they're starting to get a bit of aches and pains or this and that. It's a great option because it's so wide, broad reaching, and it's going to stop a lot of that damage that's causing all of those issues in the first place. So
I like to finish it off, maybe then what you just said is when you are stressed in any way, when your mind and body are not at ease, even if it's just irritation, impatience, worry, whatever, or distraction, your body your physiology is set to go catabolic, to break your body down, to literally fight, run. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, faking it. You know, oh yeah, sorry, that kind of thing. And we're in that a lot. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Whenever you're in those states, your body's literally aging itself, breaking itself down. It's catabolic, entirely catabolic. There's hardly any anabolism. So that's what recovery can counteract at a physical level. And then complete 360 and Shilajit at a more of an energetic and mental or psychological level can help you get out of that state. So you feel more of that eye of the storm kind of response where you're not caught up in it. And then your body can become more anabolic. And that's your healing state where you can absorb and assimilate everything else you do. When you're in a stress state, you don't absorb and assimilate or anything. Everything's dysfunctional and you age yourself really rapidly. So that's what recovery is designed to do, is to help, like you said, to mitigate and offset that increased breakdown, especially due to modern lifestyle, which is associated with a lot of stress. Until we can find a way to get out of that stress, which is what we're going to be doing more and more of with our podcasts, with Swallow the Truth, and also with Awaken Zen and other things we'll be doing to integrate with these trainings, is ways that your customers can get free little techniques and skillful means to get out of that mindset. So everything you recommend in the store of any other company, anything, that whole idea where they have a co-opetition is that will work better if they take recovery, and we're giving these different tools that are free to help everybody's products work better in their system, because we're getting them out of that stressed catabolic state.
Yeah, we just got to keep offering the conversation so more people can jump in and hear that conversation of wellness that's so important for us now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for watching. And again, we always have our technical training videos that are a little bit more short, quite a bit shorter and really succinct on the key selling features. So don't forget to check those out. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.